Welcome to Radius Radio, the podcast where security meets insight. I'm your host, Jay Lundgren. We're diving into the real stories, the challenges, and innovations shaping the security industry across Canada and the US, from construction sites to car dealerships and everything in between. If it needs protecting, we're talking about it here on the podcast. So let's get right into it. Welcome to our first episode of the Radius Radio podcast. My first guest for episode 1 here is the amazing Mario Giardini. Did I say it with a good Italian accent?
Very good, yes.
Mario is the law enforcement liaison with Radius Security. So why don't you, Mario, just give us a little bit of who you are, like what you've done in your career and what has led you to being the law enforcement liaison with Radius Security.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And Stephanie, thanks for having me, first of all. I was with Vancouver Police for 28 years. I started in 1988, and just very, very briefly, after training, I spent 7 years in the downtown east side, variety of different roles, working a little bit of undercover. I was on the mountain bikes for a year and a half, did some drug work, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and of course, responding to calls. In 1995, I went to a unit called the Strike Force. It's a undercover surveillance unit. It's a 2-year posting. Very high pressure, high profile. I was there for 5 years. From there, I went to major crime. I worked in robbery assault for about a year and a half and, honed my investigative skills, which is something that I always wanted to pursue. In 2001, I was promoted to sergeant. I took over a patrol team in Mount Pleasant, spent about a year there, and was plucked out to go work in a position that you don't apply for, internal investigations, now known as professional standards. So investigating other police officers. It was a very interesting place to go. And I have to say, I went there in 2002 and stayed till February 2005. Some of my best friends in the world, we worked together in that unit. Just some really, really, really good people. So I left there in 2005 and went and worked with youth, which is something that I always wanted to do. And I did that for a couple of years and was promoted again. In 2007, I went back to internal. Less than a year later, I was promoted again. Then I was transferred to diversity, and at the time, it was diversity and Aboriginal policing. And it was reaching out to marginalized groups, community members, and building those relationships. In terms of my career, that was the most gratifying 5 years that I spent. The relationships that I have, that I was able to build with people, I still have. Which is amazing. Yeah. And there's a lot of good community-minded members out there. Yeah. So after my 5 years there, I was transferred back to the investigative section. I was in charge of the general investigative section. I had 7 or 8 different little teams in there, property crime, financial crime. And I was there for about 6 months, 5-6 months, before I retired in January of 2016. I was retired for 2 days. And I took a job. I'd taken a job with the provincial government, and it was again in the law enforcement role. I was the manager of investigations for the province of British Columbia for liquor and cannabis. Okay. And I went to that role for one specific reason. Cannabis licensing hadn't been assigned yet to which ministry it was going to go to, but pretty sure it was going to liquor section there under the Attorney General. So we built the investigative framework for licensing cannabis in the province of British Columbia. And 2020, I officially retired.
Officially retired.
Here
with us today.
Yeah.
As the law enforcement liaison. So obviously a huge background in investigations, property crime, some great experience there that has led you to becoming part of the Radius team. So what was the story there that brought you to this group?
It's interesting. I retired. I wasn't looking for a position. I get a phone call from a friend of mine who's he's an inspector with Vancouver Police Department. He goes, "Hey, listen, are you interested in some work?" And I said, "No." Yeah. And he goes, "Well, do you know Ron Foyle?" And I go, "Yeah, I know Ron really well." And Ron was a previous law enforcement liaison with Radius.
Oh, okay.
And I met Ron when I first started, although he retired very, very shortly thereafter. Well, tell Ron to phone me. So Ron phones me and he tells me what this job is and, his insights. And so the next thing, I get a phone call or an email from Mike Baxter. And Mike says...
Mike's the president of
Radius. Yeah. And he says, look, we're going to set up a meeting with some people here on Wednesday. So I came in to meet Mike, and I remember, I think Jocelyn was there. I think Rob was there. Sharon was there. Paul was there. And we had it scheduled for an hour. We went about 2.5.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And Mike offers me the job, and I said no.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Well, why not? And I said, well, I like my little retirement.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, think about it. So I thought about it for about a week, and I thought, you know what? What's the harm? And I phoned Mike and I said, okay, let's do this.
Huh.
And from there, it comes to where we are today. It's almost 4 years to the day since I've been at Radius. And I have to say, I've been very, very happy and the way that I've been treated, over the top.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
And that's not only by the executive, that's by everybody at Radius. I walked down that narrow hallway towards the front reception desk. And on the wall are, I'm going to say 5 by 7 pictures of everybody who works in Radius.
Yeah. There's
and
their name and their title.
Absolutely.
And there's hundreds of them there.
And it wasn't like a hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It was by department, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I saw that, and that's what sold me.
Wow.
I thought, who does this?
Yeah.
Right?
That's a cool story.
I will never forget that.
For me, who's often on the road quite a bit in my role, sometimes I'll see someone at the office that I haven't maybe met before, and they'll, they might know my name and call me, and I'll often run to that board and be like, oh yeah, it's so-and-so. And then I'll run back and use their name. And yeah, so it's very handy to have that, right? Yeah. Even from that creating community aspect.
This is a company of, 250 people.
Yeah.
And everybody's picture's on the wall.
Exactly.
I found that amazing.
Neat.
And I told Mike that afterwards.
Very cool.
That was one of the little things that sold me.
Yeah. Very cool. I like that story. So you joined Radius, almost 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Give us a quick high level on what your role is, what your day-to-day looks like as part of the team here.
My role is to follow up, for the most part, on incidents that happen overnight at any of our sites. And typically the ones that I follow up on are the ones where there's been a police response.
Right.
I'll follow up, get some, let's say, information that's provided to me that probably wouldn't be provided to anybody else because of my background.
Right.
Then I do an update and I send it to the incident email team, and then that gets sent back to the client. So if you look at it in a circular fashion, we're closing the loop.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. Here's, why it took them 12 minutes to respond. Yeah. Here's why they released them or they've charged them. This is what the police need. So that's a big part of what I do. The other part that I do, and this was simply on me, is I want to make it one-stop shopping for law enforcement. So when the police officer gets a hold of me, we talk and he says, oh yeah, I'm having trouble getting a hold of the key holder. I need a statement. I go, leave it with me. I will get the statement for you. I'll get the statement from the operator who viewed the video because Crown Counsel wants that. If there's property involved, I'll deal with the property and make sure that the key holder knows how to get the property back.
Right.
So basically, I'll tell them that, and of course, video. Ashley and Petra will put it on a USB and courier it to them, or upload it to any of the forensic portals. Right.
Right.
So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Radius has the best police response times in the industry, and I think it's because of that relationship that you've created with the individual police departments, detachments. It is a
well. Thank you for that. I think it's more than that. I think it's the way that Radius does business. Right, very law enforcement friendly. I remember when I was in a patrol role with Vancouver, and I'm not going to mention the company because they're still in existence. They would get an alarm, and their first call would be to police, like an audible alarm.
Right.
And the police were being their runners.
Yeah.
And when I was first promoted, the way that our system worked in Vancouver, the afternoon shift sergeant was in charge of call management. So I'd go down the board and look at the calls, and there's an alarm call. And I would phone the alarm company and say, we're not going.
Right.
You send your runner. If there's a crime, we will go. If somebody is in danger, we will go. But we're not doing your work that you're getting paid for.
Right.
Right? And the alarm rate at that time was roughly 5% that were real alarms.
Right.
Where with Radius, I think we're above 95.
So I was reading actually some industry statistics recently, and do you know what the false alarm rate is I'm not talking about Radius, but in the industry right now, as far as security companies calling police, do you know what that number is right now?
False alarm?
This is an up-to-date number.
I'm thinking around 75.
It's higher than that.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's 98%.
That surprises me 98.
Yeah,
but it doesn't surprise me that it's that high.
Our current, we were actually at 0.7. We're actually at 0.4 Radius, our false alarm rate now. So we're 99.6% of the time we call police, they're responding to a real incident. So, that is, I'm going to give you kudos because of the relationships you've made with the law enforcement, that they do respond to us. But it is, like you said, it is the processes and the way we've done it to weed out those false alarms that has it's created that, that combination.
I get calls from police officers who I've previously dealt with saying, hey, we had this call. Can you get me the video? Right? Like they do it before I can.
Right.
And the other selling feature, and this has happened a couple of times, there was one in another jurisdiction where a law enforcement police officer was attacked. And we had it on video.
Wow.
Because I have the phone number, which nobody else does,
yeah,
of the regional duty officer for the RCMP. I phoned him and I said, hey, I've got video of this.
Wow.
And he goes, what? And I said, I've got video. They had a detective assigned. They had the guy in custody. And I phoned them and I said, I'll get you this video right now.
Amazing.
And they held the guy in custody.
Amazing.
And it wasn't pretty video.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm sure it wasn't.
It was a fairly serious assault.
Yeah.
So what I tell them is, if you have a serious incident and you think the car has gone by a Radius site, call me, give me date and time.
Yeah.
We'll pull it. If we have the video, you have it.
Right. That's amazing. Right? Radius, we're friendly to police. And I think that that's important to really understand, like, what do law enforcement, what do they see as kind of the biggest difference to responding officers? Is there certain things that security companies can do that make a difference to officers when responding?
First and foremost, we have to recognize we're in a different time right now with law enforcement. Law enforcement is stretched as thin as it gets right now.
Yeah, it is.
And there are multiple policing agencies that are after the same pool of candidates. So they prioritize all their calls, as you can understand, priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't think they go past 4. And 4 are, low level. To alleviate it, part of it is the one-stop shopping. I really want to start with what the client can do.
Okay.
When I started with Radius, I would, and I still preach it, is you go to an audible alarm and it's false, and you go 14 times. And you're going to get to the point where you're going to let your guard down, and you go thinking it's false, and something bad happens. You don't want to get to that point.
Right.
So what our clients can do is they need to take every step that they can to make their site less attractive to criminals. And sometimes what that means is they're going to look at your site and they're going to go, I'm going to go next door. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But that's what criminals do.
Yeah.
Criminals want ease of entry. They're lazy.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
They want to go to a place where they can get in undetected and, there's no lights, there's no locks. So if our clients take a couple of basic steps, you secure your premise the best you can. Good locks, good lights. As an example, let's use a construction site. They've all got the security fencing around. I have yet to see a site that's properly secured. So the criminal can just bend the fence and they're in. There's the clamps that they can use that are bolted on the inside. If they do that, it makes that fence a lot tougher to get through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not in that they can't, but it makes it tougher. Secondly, lighting.
Yeah.
Really, really, really important. Not overwhelming, but enough that
it's a deterrent in itself.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
And the third thing that's a deterrent, and we do it on a lot of our sites, and we could always do it a little bit more, is the reflective signs that we put up.
Right.
Right? So with our system, we have the talk down, we have all that stuff. That's all great.
Yeah.
But those first three things set your site up.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things, and this is one of our accounts that I have a lot of time for, they had a lockbox on one of the doors.
Yeah.
They gave the code to the police officer. He entered it on the police computer system in the notes. So if any police officers go, they look in the notes and there's a code and they can get into that site.
Right.
Which is huge.
Right.
And the code was correct, right?
Right.
And the other thing that this fellow did, he was the first guy to be called. Fortunately, unfortunately, he lives in Vancouver. And when he was called, he would show up.
Wow.
He'd answer his phone and he would show up.
Wow.
The one thing I couldn't get them to do, and it's something that I've been trying on construction sites, and to me it's very important. I have the spreadsheet. It's a very simple Excel spreadsheet. You give it to your contractors and your trades. They go down, they put the description of their tool, they engrave their driver's license number on it, all that information. When that break-in happens, if their tools are stolen, you give that to the police. I'm not saying it's more likely that they're going to get your tools back. But if they do recover them and they see a driver's license, they query it and they go, oh,
they know exactly
it belongs to Stephanie. We're going to phone her because she probably doesn't have insurance.
Right.
And she gets her tools back.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great. I never thought about that.
It's real simple. The other plus with that is if you think about these, I'm using construction sites as an example. What happens to their insurance costs when these break-ins happen? Yeah, they're going to go up.
They don't go down. I know that.
Yeah, they don't go down. But if you've taken all these steps and you don't get broken into, you're saving a ton of money that you don't have to spend on insurance.
Well, yeah.
And the other part for the contractors, if they lose their tools, they've lost their livelihood.
Yeah. Well, and the site, there's downtime too.
There's downtime for the site. If that was
supposed to be done by Friday, now it's next Thursday because they don't have the proper tools to get it done. That just delays everything within a project, right? Exactly. So if the client starts taking their security seriously and does this stuff, and I'm going to say it's minimal cost, they will save time, they will save money. Their contractors, their sub-trades will be happy, and the police will be real happy because they don't have to go. You're obviously at the forefront, have your finger on the pulse of things. Is there trends in the industry that you're seeing more of in recent days, or is there seasonality to some of these things? There is seasonality, and a lot of these construction break and enters. Where the criminal is wearing a high-vis vest and a hard hat. Hard hat. Right? They look like they're supposed to be on site. Yeah. And that way they're not drawing any suspicion, if you will. Yeah. So you're seeing that. The majority of this stuff is not organized crime. This is opportunistic crime. Yeah. So you see a lot of that. With the card, even economy can... And employment rates; those things can affect those things. Just because it could make a criminal out of otherwise good person, right? The reality of the system these days is that a lot of these people are getting back out there. So the protecting your site is really important. Yeah, as I said, most of it is opportunistic. We had one in Burnaby about 6 months ago. Not a construction site. I'm going to say a wholesaler, retailer of products, and it was planned, and they smashed the door and loaded it. That was organized. That was planned. Yeah, yeah. That's a rarity. So, Mario, before we wrap up here, I actually, there's one area I wanted to ask a little bit more about, and that's with Radius, reporting is a huge thing. Our reporting to the police detachments that are involved in a situation, the reporting to the clients. And I want to really uncover what you feel are some of the key elements that make for good reporting, both because I know it's very important for investigation teams within police detachments, but also for our clients. It's really important that they get good reports, good accurate information on an incident. So what are some of the key elements that would make
Well, you hit on one of the tenets. Really, there's three things that how we present our information, and it's not only to our clients, but how we present what we're seeing to the police. First of all, information has to be accurate, and it has to be timely, which we are, because a lot of times I know police will ask, "Oh, did this happen half an hour ago?" No, I'm watching it right now. Right? And the third thing is concise. So our operators, for the most part, that's what they do. They provide that information. Some of the information that they're providing, suspect or suspects, how many are there? Clothing descriptions, really, really important. Weapons and tools. Because you don't, and I see this on overnights where our operators are giving information to a static guard and saying, hey, he's got a bolt cutter or a crowbar.
Right.
That's for his safety.
That's for his safety.
And if there's any vehicles, direction within the site. So one of the things I get from law enforcement is they always work on northeast, west, south, right? But if we could say, okay, he's on the north side and give him a landmark. There's a C-can, it's blue or yellow or whatever it is. He's on the north side of that. And that's really important for police so that they know exactly where they're going. And sometimes on some of these sites, it's tough to tell where it is because of the lighting.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is don't speculate. Right? Just give them the information as you see it.
Right.
Don't say, don't assume what they're doing. For suspect description, always do it the same. Start at the top, go to the bottom. Height, weight, ethnicity, color hair, color clothing, whatever comes out, whatever is distinctive about them.
Right.
Because enough times the suspect leaves the site and the police see him and they go, there we go, we got a match.
Right.
And that is their grounds to stop them.
Right. Okay.
Right. And the majority of the time they've got the right person.
Yeah. I remember you taught me that in a training once about the looks like is also kind of an important element in that.
Yeah. And, so often I see on the overnights that we've sent screenshots to the police officer because they have a suspect and they look at it and they go, yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The fact that we can do that is amazing.
Amazing.
To me. This is really important. It's one of my little things that I try to drive into people. We have to be careful with our operators when we have a break into I'm going to say a construction site. They pry the fence open, they go in, they go to the porta potty. It's not a criminal offense. Okay? It might be a trespass. How many minutes do we give them inside before we phone the police? Right? If they go in, they're in there for a couple of minutes, they come out and they leave. Personally, I wouldn't call the police.
Yeah.
That's not their role. That's our role to make sure that that's secure.
That's all they do. Yeah.
Now let's say that the person is in the porta potty for 15 minutes. I'm saying I'm calling the police.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you think?
Well, I'm sure that there could be things he's doing to the porta potty that might be criminally intended. You tell me.
Wellness check.
Wellness check. Oh, right. Of course. That makes even more sense.
Could have gone in there.
Yeah.
Could have passed out.
Yeah.
Could have been using drugs.
100%.
And if we don't call, that person could die. We may be saving a life.
Yeah.
So it's a really fine line here.
That makes a lot more sense than him lining it with dynamite. That's where my brain
you never
went.
know.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
Bugs Bunny they used to.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But it's a fine line for our operators who get like 1,000 calls a night.
Right.
for them to watch that for 15 minutes. They see them going in.
Yeah.
They want to call the police because, hey, this is in progress.
Yeah.
But then they come back out and the police are, as we've talked about, are under-resourced.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure. And that's a real judgment call. And the other one, and I just want to go back to safely securing the site. That's not a police issue.
Yeah.
That's a client issue.
Client issue, yeah.
And that will negate a police response.
Right.
We're not going to go in because the site's not safe.
Right.
So those are things that we can do for law enforcement. And when I say we, I mean us, law enforcement, and the client. One of the other things that we, Radius, do that nobody else does, and I have one happening right now, where when I'm speaking to law enforcement, I always try to access their community safety teams or whatever. We have a site that's been hit a lot in the interior. Mm-hmm. The RCMP are doing a CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design assessment of that site. The key holder is all over it. Do you know how much that costs a key holder? Zero.
Yeah.
It's a value-added service that we at Radius can provide to our client.
Yeah.
And the RCMP is happy to do that because if it reduces calls, it saves them money.
It saves them money and time and resources.
Yeah. And what does it save the client? Same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
time,
it's
money,
just
resources.
connecting these people. Yeah. We've done it a couple of times here in the Lower Mainland. I try to do that whenever it's available. You take a couple of those steps and your calls go down 10%, 100%, whatever it is.
Right.
So it's something that we do that I have not seen any other security company do.
Yeah.
Period.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. Mario, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. You're definitely a wealth of knowledge and an incredible asset to not only Radius, but our clients and the law enforcement detachments in our area. You bring a lot of value to all of us. So we really appreciate your expertise, your experience, and your willingness to do what you do.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate you having me on and letting me speak a bit.
It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for having us. Look forward to episode 2 coming out soon.